Hey, welcome in. Appreciate everybody's tuning in. Sorry about last week. Unexpected, had to be done. Couldn't be helped. Back at it tonight, though. Anybody just reached out to me over the past week or so, 10 days, week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it's been. Appreciate it. Definitely been noticed. Very much appreciate it. Back at it now, though. We're gonna try to get through a full hour here tonight. I think I'm gonna be all right. If not, we'll cut it short. But 2 weeks, man, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now. The day's actually Monday, so we are less than 2 weeks away from the opener there in Atlanta, Clemson and Georgia. Clemson, 13.5-point underdogs. If you ask Jake Brennistool, they're not an underdog. We actually going to get games next week, but since this is kind of Clemson centric here, we're going to focus on 2 weeks from now. I'm not going to do no deep dive into Florida State, Georgia Tech, or anything like that. Other than to say I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia Tech don't win that game, straight up. What do you expect when Clemson rolls into Atlanta? I see a lot of optimism with some fans, and then some fans, I see the sky's falling and Clemson's going to get steamrolled and beat by 30, 40 points. I'm very anxious to see how this Clemson team performs against what I think's the best team in the country. Definitely the most talented. Kirby's kind of been stacking talent there year after year for several years now. He's turned that thing into a machine, man. And when they lose somebody, they just kind of plug the next guy right in. So I'm very anxious to see, particularly what this Clemson offense looks like. Listening to Klubnik talk the other day, or it's probably been about a week or so ago now, but he talked about how young they were in spots on the offensive side of the ball last year. And he's got a point there. There was a lot of youth, particularly when the injuries started to set in. Anybody that follows Clemson knows they've not been able to keep a receiver healthy for 3 years now. Knock on wood, so far so good in that regard. I am very anxious to see what this offense looks like, what Klubnik looks like. Now that he's had a year under his belt this last offseason, he looks a little different physically. He looks stronger. I've heard good things about, his leadership skills and how he's kind of grabbed that by the horns over the offseason, and that's kind of what you want your quarterback to do. But I'm also anxious to see how this offensive line performs under Matt Luke. We hear good things. Obviously we're not allowed at any of the scrimmages or anything like that. But the things I've heard have been positive for, even, with Latham there at center. It's going to make for an interesting couple of weeks, man, because there's going to be, especially the national narrative mostly is going to be Clemson's going to get their teeth kicked in. And, we've really only seen Clemson get smacked like that once in the past few years. That was up there in South Bend the year before last. Other than that, Clemson's usually competitive even in the games they lose. I'll be very surprised if Clemson doesn't make that game competitive. That doesn't mean they don't end up losing by 2 touchdowns. You can have a very competitive game and one team be up by 7 and the same team score a late touchdown and end up winning it by 14. Doesn't mean the game wasn't competitive. But I'm mostly interested in seeing how that offense stacks up against that Georgia defense, which is supposed to be really good again. I know they got some questions in certain spots, particularly the pass defense. So very, very, very curious to see. I keep saying the offense, but it's really the passing game, right? I think we're all ready to see what this passing game looks like. All right, I'm gonna jump over to the questions real quick. I take it long as I can. Hopefully, we can get it the whole hour. So far, so good. So. Georgia fans are confident Clemson won't be able to hang it off. See, I don't spend a whole lot of time on Twitter right now, man. There's just too much politics, man, and I can't stand politics. So I don't spend a whole lot of time on Twitter. But I would imagine the Georgia fans are very confident. I put myself in their position, and I see what this Clemson team's done on the offense side of the ball the past 2 or 3 years, and I'd probably be pretty confident too. Georgia had an argument for getting in the playoff last year. They get in. Who knows what happens? But again, I just have a hard time seeing this game not being competitive. I'm not making any prediction yet. I'll do that, when we get closer to the game. But I have a hard time seeing Clemson not making it competitive, even without Shelton Lewis, who I see a couple of people asking me about that. I don't have any updates on Shelton Lewis other than the fact that I'll be surprised if he plays against Georgia. I know Dabo called him day-to-day last week, but if you've been around long enough, followed this team long enough, sometimes Dabo's day-to-day can mean 4, 5, 6 weeks. Basically, when it boils right down to it, pretty much all that means is it's not season ending. So you can expect him back at some point, but I'll be surprised if he suits up versus Georgia. Did hear they were supposed to get Jaden Lucas back this week. I don't know if he was back today or not. I haven't heard one way or the other. But I do think it's a bad sign if he's already dealing with that same shoulder again. But you hate to run a bunch of inexperienced guys out there in game one versus Georgia. But, man, if you're going to lose somebody on that side of the ball, maybe corners where you wanted to be, because there's a lot of talent in that room. Ashton Hampton's been getting very high marks throughout fall camp. We wasn't even here during the spring. Corey and Gibson was one of the better corners in the class last time. I think Tavoy Fegan came in a little underrated, had a really good spring. And you just got to hope you can keep Terrell healthy. You need him on one side of the field, absolutely. But I see him as a guy that can basically lock down one side of the field. And when you got that kind of guy, it gives you some options in coverage. Am I crazy for being optimistic about receivers and O-line? I don't think so. Not if you're – I don't think so. I think it's a good sign that everybody's healthy in that receiver room, first and foremost. It's just been so long since we've seen that. I think I talked about it on here before, maybe last time. I remember Tyler Grisham talking about the variety. That's the word he used in that room. And I think they do have a good mixture in that room of, smaller, shiftier, speedier guys. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the taller, bigger body guys. On the outside, I think they got a better mix than they've had in recent years. But again, it all starts with keeping them healthy. And they've had some pretty good showings against Clemson's defense and scrimmages and stuff. I think those are, encouraging signs. But again, I don't think any of us are going to know for sure until the lights come on the 31st. And that doesn't necessarily mean Clemson has to go out and win that game. So I don't think they do. Again, if it's me, I'm perfectly happy, or let's just say content, if Clemson shows some improvement and competes in that game and shows, hey, man, you know what? Yeah, we can compete. But it might not have been our night tonight, but we compete against these guys, and if we can compete against these guys, we could probably compete against anybody. Good running game and a great defense. I give you the latter. You're gonna need a strong defensive effort to have a shot in that game. But I don't know how much you're running the ball on Georgia. You're gonna have to be able to run it a little bit to keep them honest. I don't know that you're running for 150, 200 yards on that defense. And I'm as big a Phil Maffa fan as anybody. But that defense has been strong against the run. I suspect they will be again this year. They're going to have to make some plays in the passing game if they're going to win. That's just all there is to it, and not the dinking and dunking stuff. They're going to have to make a play or two at least down the field. If you allow that Georgia defense to just stack the line of scrimmage, knowing you're not going to throw it down the field and they can just kind of peel their ears back, it's going to make for a long night. You got to at least give them the threat of something down the field, and then in turn, that can open up a little bit of room in the running game. I'm expecting surprises from Riley and play calls now that he potentially has a functioning offensive line and skill depth. Yeah, I mean, we heard Garrett Riley say himself last year that he was kind of a little, limited in what he could do. When he was asked why Clemson's offense didn't resemble TCU's offense, and he pretty much said it was personnel. I think we all saw the first half of the season how some of the stuff he wants to do in the running game, and it Clemson's offensive line just was not up to the task. They were not very good in some of those things he wanted to do, and by the Notre Dame game they had gone back to mostly zone blocking and zone stuff. And hopefully with a guy like Matt Luke on board, the hope is that that's just it wasn't the hope is that it was maybe some coaching issue, and now that you got this experienced veteran coach in there, he can get you over that hurdle. And yeah, I agree. If your offensive line's adequate and your receivers are making some plays, it's going to allow him to do more than what we saw last year. It was very, very vanilla last year, very conservative. I mean, just think back to last year and think of how few shots they took down the field over the back half of the season, particularly the final third of the season. I mean, they just quit trying, and everything was a slant or a little out or a wide receiver screen, just dinking and dunking and trying to score on 10, 11, 12 play drives. And while I think you need to be able to do that, I don't think that needs to be what you solely rely on doing. But yeah, I absolutely, man. If you get better offensive line play and better play from skill guys, it's going to open up what he can do. Are our receivers good? Well, let's see. You got 2 former 5-stars in that room they just signed. You had a freshman All-American at receiver last year, a freshman All-American at receiver the year before that, top 100 guy who's been hurt the past 2 seasons, banged up the past 2 seasons, has not been fully healthy yet. That's 5 guys right there off the top of my head, all of them pretty dang good receivers, and that's not even counting Stellato, who was pretty highly touted coming out of high school himself. There's some talent in that room, man. All you got to do is kind of go down the depth chart or the roster and look at the receivers, and it's pretty easy to see. Just got to keep them healthy. Granny said we are ready to go to war for him. Yeah, and that's not the first time we've heard something similar to that. one of the offensive linemen, I forget who it was. It might have been the week before last. Said they're ready to run through a brick wall for him, for Klubnik. I think Klubnik did a lot of good things over this offseason to kind of make the offense more cohesive and closer as a group. And I don't think there's a lot of selfishness on that side of the ball. It sounds like there's a lot of selflessness, in fact. And that's kind of what you want to see. How's the backup running backs look? Yeah, that's still one of the questions. I would probably lean towards Keith Adams at this point, but I think as long as Jay Haynes can stay healthy, I think you're going to see some of him too, because he's just a little bit different than those other two guys, Maffa and Adams. Maffa and Adams, both the bigger, more of the bruising type backs. Haynes is smaller, shiftier. He's kind of a home run threat when he touches the ball. A good change of pace guy. It'll be interesting to see if Ajama can work himself into getting some carries. It sounds like he's coming along here in fall camp. But if I had to venture a guess, it's probably going to be, obviously Maffa and then some sort of mixture of Adams and Haynes behind him and maybe some Ajama thrown in. I think Jarvis Green's been banged up some here in fall camp. He's kind of become the forgotten man, but he's still in there too. But kind of like the receiver room. I like the makeup of the running back room too. I always thought Adams was a little underrated considering where he played his high school football out in the Northwest. Don't get a lot of attention out there, but I also thought Haynes was underrated, as was Jarvis Green. And Ajama, I thought he was a little underrated too, even though he wasn't. He was pretty highly touted coming out of high school. He's got some wheels and can motor too. I think he can run a 10.8 100 or something like that, 10.88 or 10.89. That's moving pretty good. When Dabo says day to day, I take it to mean it could have been a while. They're waiting to keep the players' motivation up, stay positive. Yeah, when he says day to day, I just sometimes it's going to mean day to day, sometimes it's going to mean week to week, sometimes it might mean a month or so. He's pretty tight-lipped about those things, unless if this season ends, it's the good news is that it's not season ending. And I don't know all the specifics on it. I've just heard it was a knee and that he was on crutches after scrimmage that day. But again, and don't even hold me to that being true. That's just what I heard. I was not there, but again, the good news is they're expecting him to be back at some point. We need a speed back. I think you got two guys that can move in that backfield. Now, it's not the starting guy in Maffa, but I think Haynes and Easy are two guys that are home run threats whenever they touch the ball. Be honest, do we really have what it takes? I don't see her surviving this. I'm honest in everything I say. I give you my honest opinion. You say I don't see us surviving this. I say I think you're putting too much stock into one game. I don't know if Clemson's going to beat Georgia or not. Again, I'm not even sitting here making a prediction today. There's a lot that can happen between now and next Thursday or Friday, a day or two before that game kicks off. Um, a lot of things that could happen that could impact that game. There's a lot of practice to be had since there's a lot of guys. You never know. Somebody might go down hurt. You just don't ever know. But I say what I said earlier. I've only seen Clemson get punched in the mouth and not respond one time. Since they started those playoff runs, and really since 2012. That 2011 team of Dabo's used to get punched in the mouth and would fold, but since then, it ain't been too many times they've got punched in the mouth and not responded. And since they started with that playoff run, I've only seen it once, and that was up in South Bend a couple of years ago. I wouldn't even. I saw somebody else refer to the LSU game, and that game was competitive for a while. And I wouldn't say Clemson got punched in the mouth and didn't respond in that game. I don't know if Clemson's going to win or not. I don't think winning should be the litmus test. I'm not of the opinion that Clemson's going to be able to compete for a national title this year. I want to see them be able to compete with one of the best teams in the country. That's what I want to see. Now, not everybody's going to agree with that. They think Clemson should be a national title contender every single season, and that's just not the way it's going to be, ever. Yeah, look, I'm not saying nobody ever runs on Georgia. I'm just saying they're usually pretty good against the run. It's not, you don't see them very often giving up 150, 200 yards. They don't do that very often every season. I'm not saying it never happens, but again, I'm not saying it never happens. It's not something that routinely happens. If you're expecting to go out there and run for 150, 200 yards on those guys, I wouldn't bet money on it. If it's just say that, especially the way Clemson's passing game has been the past couple of years, they're going to make Clemson throw the ball. They're going to load up and stop that run, and they're going to make Clemson throw the ball if they want to win. One thing that scares me is the spring game. I didn't see much improvement. Well, then you're putting too much stock in spring games. They're not. You can't put that much stock in a spring game. Go back and watch some of the spring games from 12, 13, 14, 15. You'll see some pretty vanilla ones then too. They weren't always up there lighting up the scoreboard in spring games. But will Klubnik be able to get them to them? If you can give him time and his receivers are getting separation, I don't see why he can't. Like I said 2 weeks ago, this is a kid that he was so good in high school, and it is not translated to the collegiate level yet. Make no mistake, we've not seen that guy at this level yet, but it's in there. Go cut on some of his games from when he was at Westlake as a senior. That especially that championship game when he beat, I forget what team it was, but Quinn Ewers was the quarterback. That it's in there somewhere, man. He's just got to tap into it and find it. But he's also, you say, will Klubnik be able to get at them? He's got to get help from the other guys around him too. He didn't get a whole lot of help last year, particularly from the guys up front. While I think the receivers weren't as bad as some people let on, they didn't give him near as much help as they could have. And by the end of the year, there was no faith in that passing game, and that wasn't just all because of Klubnik. It was the whole offense. They had no faith in their ability to push the ball down the field. They didn't have any faith in the offensive line to protect long enough. They didn't have any faith in receivers to go down there and catch the ball. And they didn't have any faith in Klubnik to get it to him. But like I said, I believe he's got it in him. He's just got to tap into it and find it. And first and foremost, he's got to get some help from the other guys around him. I'm smelling no huddle air raid versus Georgia. I wouldn't mind seeing some hurry up. I thought Cade had his best drive of the season when they went hurry up against Kentucky last year, and he didn't have to think too much, and he just went out there and let it rip and play. I don't know if you're going to see a full-blown air raid because that's not really what Garrett Raleigh does. But, he's got some air raid tendencies. It's not a full-blown air raid offense. But I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of hurry up. But if you're going to run hurry up, you got to pick up first downs because if you don't pick up first downs, then you're just 3 and out real quick. Can you explain the Daboism different that he keeps mentioning for Adam? Not really. I've kind of wondered that myself. I think they're very similar. Back type backs. I just Keith Adams. I want to say he played his high school ball in Utah, so it's not like he got a lot of attention out there. He might have played in California. I can't remember. But he played somewhere. I think it was Utah. But they're both bigger body guys. I think Adams is, 5'9", 5'10", 215, 220. So, they're kind of similar in that regard. I'm not real sure what Dabo means by, different. To me, they're kind of similar. So I've actually kind of wondered that myself. Georgia's heads are big because of the whooping they put on FSU. Clemson is not that FSU team that quit. Sleep on the Tigers if you want. Well, I do think that Orange Bowl was not very indicative of what that Florida State team was last year. Although I think Georgia would have beat them pretty good regardless without Jordan Travis. I could see that being a reason, but I also see the last 3 years as being a reason why Georgia's got the big head. How good they've been the last 3 years, the steps Clemson's taken backwards the past 3 years, it kind of all adds in. Georgia's kind of in a similar position to where Clemson was 3, 4, 5 years ago. Clamoring for a national title for decades. Kirby Smart comes in, then they win 2 back-to-back, and all that pent-up frustration over the past 40 years or whatever it was is, they're letting it rip now. They got reason to be confident, man. I think Georgia's the top team in the country. I'm very curious to see how Clemson stacks up. How long before Feinbaum drops Clemson and Dabo goes off? Unless Feinbaum's got the balls to show up to Clemson and drop it in his face, I don't think I doubt Dabo's going to pay it much attention. The last time Dabo went off on somebody doing that was somebody in the press room mentioned it to him. And, for him to go off that way, I think it'd have to be that way again. somebody would have to mention that word, like in a question in the press room to him. I don't think you can see him do much responding to what some guy like Feinbaum says on his radio show or on the SEC network or ESPN or anything like that. But I'll also add this: I wouldn't be looking forward to ESPN having a whole lot good to say about Clemson, in the immediate future, due to these lawsuits and stuff. I just don't see ESPN having much good to say about them at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. Has Klubnik improved enough? Does he have reliable receivers? Yeah, I've already touched on receivers. I think if they're healthy, they're reliable. And I think you also got to ask in there, has the offensive line, has the pass protection, is it going to be improved? Because I think that is a big component here. And, as far as Klubnik improving, I don't think none of us are going to know the answer to that until we get to game time. Even Dabo said a couple of weeks ago, as good of a spring and summer and fall as he's had, he's still got to go out and do it in the game. And, that's just a question that I'm not going to be able to answer. Nobody's going to be able to answer. We're all kind of in wait and see mode. But I do think this offense's problems have run deeper than the quarterback. Don't get me wrong now. I'm not saying the quarterback has no blame. I just think they run deeper than that. And there's a lot of blame to be, there's a lot of areas to spread a lot of blame around. What am I looking to see in the FSU versus Georgia Tech game? I'm curious to see what DJ looks like in Mike Norvell's offense. I'm not a. I think DJ is kind of who he is at this point. I think he was basically the same guy at Oregon State last year as he was at Clemson the year before. His numbers might have been a little bit better, but if you watch him against the better teams like Oregon or Washington, he looked like the same guy. So I'm kind of curious to see what he looks like in this new offense, and how much Norvell's had to tweak it to maybe try and suit some of his strong suits, or what he does best, which is, I guess, which is his strong arm. It's not the most accurate of arms, but it's strong. And I'm also curious to see whether Florida State's going to beat Georgia Tech, because I don't think that's a guarantee. I think people might be sleeping on how much improved Georgia Tech's going to be this year, and due to all the roster turnover there in Tallahassee, I'm not buying Florida State. I didn't buy them last year either. Let me say that up front. I wasn't buying them last year either, and they turned out to be better than I thought they was going to be. But I'm not buying them again this year. There's just been so much roster turnover there. And even, like I've said a couple of times before, DJ was not their top choice. They wanted Cam Ward. They had to end up selling for DJ when Ward, didn't jump on board. And DJ also doesn't have Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and those Frisbee catching dogs there at receiver they had last year. He also doesn't have that. They lost that running back. They lost a ton off that team from last year and replaced a bunch of it through the portal. So be interesting to see where they are chemistry-wise. Anything new on the recruiting front for the 2025 class? Not really. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage this, or once the House settlement gets finalized, how they manage this new roster thing and how Dabo chooses to address the 105 scholarships and if he uses them all, or how they go about doing it. That's going to start next year. But Clemson still wants to add offensive linemen in this class. I could see them adding another safety. Right off the top of my head, I don't think they're going to add. I don't think they're looking to add a whole lot more, but I do think they got a few more pieces they want to add, and at least one more offensive lineman, one more safety maybe, and Jordan Young's kind of been that guy, but I think you can kind of probably scratch him off now. I think they're done at linebacker. I could see if they found the right guy, maybe another defensive lineman. I think they're done at running back. I think they're done at tight end. I think they're done at receiver. But nothing really. We've been in a dead period for this month, for fall camp stuff. It's not really nothing to really talk about for 2025. I guess by now everybody saw Clemson did hand out another quarterback offer last week to Brock Bradley kid from there in Alabama. Been working out at camp. I think since he was in the 7th or 8th grade. God has grown up really. I'm not saying he grew up a fan of Clemson or rooting for Clemson, but he's grown up with a lot of admiration for Clemson. And, that's tells you right there they want to take 2 quarterbacks. And after having talked to him and a couple other people, it's due to the fact that they didn't take one in 2024. So by the time he gets here, you'd have, let's just say you land that kid, and by the time he gets here, you got Reynolds and Bradley along with Vizzina finishing up and Hebert. So that would give you 4 scholarship quarterbacks, which is kind of where they like to be. Nothing really for 2025, though. Do you think it'll be Gunn kicking off, Hauser, PAT, and then Swanson punter, or Hauser and Swanson? This is just a guess, and just based on nothing but a hunch. I think Gunn's probably your kickoff guy if Hauser wins the field goal kicking or place kicking job. And right now he's ahead. He's been a little bit ahead, for most of fall camp. Sounds like. And yeah, I think Swanson's the punter. Yeah. And then you'll probably transition to Jack Smith next year, who's a big dude, man. He's like 6'5", 240. Big punter. What is your opinion of Vizzina now? I've not seen enough of Vizzina to really, make an educated opinion of where he's at. We've gotten 2 very, we saw him in the spring game twice. And again, I just don't think that's a very good gauge. I have heard that he has had a really, really good camp, or he had a really good fall camp. I've said it many times. I think Vizzina's got all the tools. Big kid, strong, big arm, accurate with the football. He can throw on the run. He's more mobile than people give him credit for. He was just raw coming out of high school. He just needed time to be able to develop, sit behind somebody and learn. He's kind of getting that at Clemson. I always said he was going to need a year or 2, before he's ready to roll. And hopefully by this time next year, he could be, he could be a guy you could turn to if you need him. They need him to be that next year. That's right. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, man. We are here every Monday night at 7 o'clock. Most every Monday night at 7 o'clock. Sometimes, things just can't be helped. No way I could do this show from a hospital bed last week. So, um, but we're here most Mondays, man. Hit that like button and subscribe button, man. Appreciate that, bud. What's more likely to happen? Clemson wins by 7 or loses by 21 against Georgia? I don't know. You know, I could see a scenario playing out where Clemson, plays Georgia competitive for most of the game, and the offense doesn't do a whole lot, and the defense tires out in the fourth quarter, and they end up getting beat by 20 or 21 points. I can see a scenario playing out in that regard. So I'd probably go with the latter. Y'all still there? My Wi-Fi dropped there for a minute, man. Recycle, reboot. I got to find back where I was. Y'all let me know if y'all can see me and hear me and all that good stuff. Okay, I see Carson saying, there we go. All right. Sorry about that. I didn't even know if it was going to let me back in when I come back online. Never had that happen before. This is where I was headed. Ernie says open up the playbook. I think Garrett Riley would like to do nothing more than to, open up that offense a little bit more. I wish I could remember which game it was last year when we heard from Garrett Riley. It was during the season. It'd probably be easy to find because we only heard from him like a couple of times during the season last year. But it was like 4 or 5 games into the season, and I remember him being asked, touched on this earlier, why Clemson's offense wasn't looking like what TCU's offense looked like the year before. And, his answer basically boiled down to, personnel. They just weren't able to do it. And I think he'd love nothing more than to be able to open it up a little bit. But there's a lot of things to factor into that. When your offensive line can't pass protect long enough to throw the ball down the field, plus you don't have faith in your receivers to go get anything down the field, the ones that are actually healthy enough to go down the field, and you don't really have faith in your quarterback to get it to them once they do get down there, it kind of limits what you can do. And I think that's where Garrett Riley found himself last year. So they ended up going very conservative, leaning on that defense that was really good, and ended up winning 5 straight. I think our offensive line need better strength and conditioning coaches. They are weak and play with no mean streak. In my opinion, those mean streaks you talk about, you either got them or you don't. And, as far as the strength and conditioning goes, it's the same guy has been Clemson's strength and conditioning coordinator since before Dabo got there. So it's the same guy that was, heading up that program that was there during the playoff runs. Now, is there anything different now compared to back then? I can't answer that. I doubt he's changed up all that much, though. But again, that's something that I can't speak on. All I can say is the same guy's been in charge of the program all those years. They did lose. They've lost an assistant here or there over the years, but it's, Joey Batson's, he's been running that thing since, golly, I forget how long, since before Dabo's been there. The key is developing confidence in this game. Offensively, not every drive, but some good drives, good plays, develop chemistry, and build game and game. See, that's kind of that's kind of how I see it. I don't think there should be too much pinned on one game, especially a non-conference game, to start the season, especially now in this expanded playoff where all you got to do is win your conference to get in. But I don't think Clemson can afford to go out there and get steamrolled and get shut down totally on offense and look just as inept as they looked the past 3 years. You got to show some signs of progress, because if you don't, it's going to be like that snowball, man, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be hard to push that bad boy back up the hill. Yes, it was Mr. Hale that got that dressing down that day for saying Clemsoning, or asking Dabo about that. What's Sammy Brown's role going to look like right off the bat? He's going to be a reserve behind Woodaz at least. It wouldn't be surprising if he's the third guy off the bench in at least that first game. Heck, if you listen to Dabo the other day, he kind of made it. He didn't come right out and say it, but he kind of made it sound like maybe he'd start out on special teams and see where we go from there. But I do think you're fortunate to have guys like Carter and Woodaz in front of him, where you kind of bring him along at his own pace and don't have to put too much on his shoulders in his freshman year. But you want to talk about a dude that looks the part. He looks the part. Still wearing, last time I was there, he was still wearing a brace on that left knee, though. I think it was the left one. Because I remember back in camp, he had a little bit of a limp. Don't know what happened to him, but he was wearing a sleeve on it then. And don't get me wrong, he looks fine. It's probably just precautionary stuff, but he is wearing a brace on it, whatever was wrong with it. No, I didn't drop any hints. I'm just saying I doubt ESPN is going to do Clemson any favors right now. They can't be, ESPN's making bank on their ACC television deal. Making bank. They can't be happy with Clemson and Florida State trying to upset that apple cart. Mentioned dudes running open last year deep. I don't think Cade trusts his arm. I don't think it's that. And I'm not saying dudes were running wide open down the field all the time. I'm just saying there were, instances, particularly Stellato, being open down the field. And I don't think Cade saw him. There was one game last year that I would almost bet anything they were only giving him one read. And if it wasn't there, take the check down. Can't remember what game it was. And I thought I saw some frustration on Stellato's part, a time or two, because Cade didn't see him down the field. I'm not saying he don't trust his arm on deep throws. He doesn't have the strongest of arms. Sometimes he puts a little too much air under the ball, but he can make throws 20, 35, 40 yards down the field. How many more? I don't know how many more yet. I've always said it would probably end up somewhere in the 18, 21 range, probably closer to 18 now. Cade having another year left, do you think Vizzina will hit the portal if he doesn't get playing time? Yeah, ask me that again next year, because just because he's got another year left don't mean he's planning on using it. There's a lot that can happen in a year's time. I can't really answer that at this point. Right here, in a perfect world, you would – some of these teams on the schedule this year, you'd get up on them and you'd be able to, give Vizzina some snaps and see what he can do in some mop-up duty. Not that Dabo's going to send him out there to run up score or anything, but you can at least get an idea. Because again, I think it's very hard to gauge a guy just based off, what you see in spring game. So our conditioning that far behind SEC teams that we can hang around for a quarter or two and then fall. I don't think I said that in any way, shape, or form. I didn't come close to saying that. I said I could see a scenario in which Clemson's offense doesn't do much at all. The defense gets hung out to dry and stuck on the field for 4 quarters, having to play play after play after play while the offense goes 3 and out and not giving those guys any rest. I don't care, where your conditioning is at. Very few defenses are going to hold up against the number 1 team in the country under those circumstances. It's not a strength and conditioning thing. It's more about playing complementary football and both sides helping each other out instead of one side hanging the other out to dry. Just turn the house on. I think that's what the wife did, man. I think she went outside and hit the big button. Hard reset on everything. Surprise, Florence. Man, I ain't even in Florence. I'm in Timminsville. And it took a while. It took a minute for it to get out here. We went a little while without it. Do I think freshman receivers will have an impact in this game? Yes. I think if Clemson has a shot at winning, they've got to. I think you're going to see Bryant Wesco play. I think you're probably going to see TJ Moore play. At least to get his feet wet. You'll probably see Wesco a little bit more in this one since he's been around longer and he's a little more acclimated. But yes, I think if Clemson's got is going to have a shot at winning, they need those. They need something from Wesco or Moore, maybe both. They add a different dynamic. As much as I like Adam Randall, he's not as fast as those guys are. He's a bigger bodied outside guy, but that's kind of where the comparisons end. That those guys, particularly Wesco, man, he's got elite level speed. I think Randall's probably a little bit faster than he's gotten credit for, faster than he's looked at times, but he ain't Wesco fast. Wesco and Moore are guys that can take the tops off defenses, and that's what this offense has lacked. A guy that can take the top off the defense consistently. On a bigger body outside guy that can take the top off the defense. Have you talked about Bower? Yeah, a little bit a couple weeks ago when we first saw him out there. No, this is his first foray into coaching. He's kind of, the days we were out there, at least, anyways, he was mostly kind of just hanging back, taking it in. I guess soaking everything up. It'd be interesting to see how he is on game days, though. Did see him doing a little bit of coaching with one of the walk-ons on the second day, but mostly just kind of taking it all in. He's got a lot to learn. Yeah, he's just an unpaid intern and just now beginning this journey. But yeah, he does bring some fire. Curious to see him on game days. ESPN. Okay, I'll take this one. I'm not gonna talk anymore about expansion. I get tired of talking about that stuff, man. Especially when nothing's new come out. If ESPN is making so much bank, why is it that contract being renegotiated unless those TV networks want consolidations or team? Why would they renegotiate it? They've got all the leverage. You know, they're the ones making all the money. They won't even tell you how much money the ACC network's making. They get the ACC at such a discount, compared to what they're paying the SEC. They're just making a lot of money. Why would they want to renegotiate and give away some of that? And if your answer is because Clemson's Florida State's leaving, let's see how it plays out, because ESPN's got a lot of power in this thing, and they can end up negotiating that thing to where they just jump right over to the SEC. Nobody knows how this thing's going to play out yet, but I don't think it's being renegotiated because I don't think ESPN wants to give away any money. I think it's just that simple. They get it at such a discount, basically, and have for years. And who's to say they might not even opt in after 2027? Think Cole Turner will have a big year. I'm kind of. I think Cole Turner has a chance to be in the rotation and help this team, but I think if he's a starting receiver, you're in trouble. Just my opinion. I was, from my understanding, Lucas is supposed to be back sometime this week. I don't, they were back at practice today, but I've not been in Clemson. I've not been at practice or any media session since today. Actually, was 2 weeks ago. No, tomorrow will be 2 weeks ago. I've been dealing with some stuff, and I've not. I was up there all last week, but I was not at any practice, any press availability since. Again, tomorrow will be 2 weeks ago. So I haven't talked to a ton of people. From my understanding, though, he's supposed to be back one day this week. But as I said earlier, the fact that it's that shoulder that's already bothering him, the same shoulder, I don't know that that's a good sign. We'll see. Maybe it's something he can play through. Maybe it's not. It's I don't know. I do think Clemson's got a lot of talent in that cornerback room. Not a lot of experienced talent, but a lot of talent. Or nothing but great things about Ashton Hampton all throughout camp. Corey and Gibson, one of the best corners in the last class. I think Devoy Fegan was severely underrated, and I think you got a guy in Terrell that can lock down one side of the field. When you got a guy like that, I think it gives you a lot of options on what you can do on the back end. Is the offensive line better? I think the offensive line is going to be better this year. I really, truly, honestly believe that. Now the question becomes how much better. I think they'll be a lot better in year 2 under Matt Luke. But I do think they're going to be much improved. I think Matt Luke's that good. And I've said it for years. I think Clemson's got talent in that offensive line room. Just go back and look at – and I'm not a big recruiting rankings guy, but go back and look at the recruiting rankings of a lot of those guys. Man, those are mostly blue-chip guys. So it's not like they're devoid of talent or anything. So, yeah, I do think the offensive line is going to be better. Just from the guy because of the guy who's now in place coaching them. If you had to rate this year's defense compared to some other years, how would you do so? Appreciate that, man. I really like what Clemson's got linebacker. I like what they got in the back end. I think if you can get one more pass rusher to go opposite of TJ Parker, I think Clemson can be really good on defense. I love what they got on the interior with guys like Capehart and Peyton Page. And, man, if you could just get Vic Burley in a position to where he can just help out a little bit, that just makes you that much better. I think you got a lot of depth on the interior. But if Peter Woods is capable of getting after the quarterback and I think he is. If he's able to getting out, if he's capable of getting after the quarterback and put pressure on those guys, and being what Clemson needs him to be opposite of TJ Parker, I think this defense has got a lot of potential. I think the pass defense, assuming nobody else gets hurt, should be as good as it was last year. There's a lot to like. Is it what it was back in 2016, 2017, 2018? Probably not. Maybe I don't think it's that far off though. I think they're comparable, but I would definitely give the nod to those earlier teams. Turner is one of the fastest on the team. I can't say that he's the fastest, but that doesn't, necessarily equate to him needing to be a starting receiver on the outside. Again, I think he's a guy that, can be in the rotation and help you. I just think if he's one of your starters, and that does not bode well. Yeah, I don't know if Hannafin was working at linebacker or not. Again, I've not been around in a couple of weeks. So I haven't really talked to a lot of people. I've been really sick, Let's just put it that way. And, I was out of the loop for more than a week. I'm just kind of getting back into the swing of it now. But, Hannafin did play some defense in high school, so it's not a foreign concept to him. And if you need an extra body there, he's absolutely a guy that you can work in there. But I don't know why they would need him at linebacker. I'd have to check into that. I've seen people talking about it on Twitter and stuff, but I can't tell you one way or other for sure. But I don't know, barring somebody getting hurt, why you need him at linebacker. But maybe if you're working him as a DB for an extra body over there, I could see that. But he has played some defense before, though, so yeah, it's not something forward to him. Yeah, I could see Hannafin working at the nickel. I just, again, he's played there some in high school. I can't tell you one way or the other if he has for sure. A lot of people on the back end here asking me about Cade and is he ready to take the next step. I spent a lot of the first 30 minutes talking about that. If you want to go back and rewatch it, appreciate everybody that's tuned in tonight. If you've not hit that like button, please do so. Hit that subscribe button. Barring something unforeseen, we'll be right back here next Monday, 7 p.m. Check us out, ClemsonInsider.com.